What is up, everybody? It's Tuesday morning. I'm Jake Rowe. He's Jake Roos. We are DawgsHQ. We got a lot to talk about. We got Jaden Rashada lawsuit kind of fell in our laps right before the show started. We had something we were going to talk about. We're still going to talk about it, but we're also going to talk about this lawsuit a little bit because it's pretty interesting. Georgia, is it really number one? I mean, is that really what we're thinking here going into the offseason or going through this offseason? And more from the Scavenger Hunt. Roos, man, what do you think about this? What do you think about this Jaden Rashada lawsuit?
Well, like you said, good fodder. We were kind of struggling to come up with some topics for this morning, and that dropped about 10 minutes before we got on air. So that worked out pretty well for us. Here's my thing, man, and I've said this the whole time when it comes to this Jaden Rashada thing. This is just an extension of what we saw earlier. Anybody in their right mind would do what Jaden Rashada is doing. If somebody offers you $13 million, you're going to take it. What they're alleging in this lawsuit is that essentially Florida scammed them away from Miami, which cost them $9 million. If somebody steals $9 million from you, you're going to sue them. So these shouldn't come as surprises, in my opinion. I also want it noted, too, that, and I was reading this over on the boards over at Gators Online, our friends Keith Niebuhr, Corey Bender, Nick Delatorre over there, they do a fantastic job covering the Gators. Not that anybody here is going to go read that, but they pointed to the fact, Keith did, that this is not new. This is not something that happened as a result of Jaden Rashada coming to Georgia. It's not something that This had been in the works well before he left Arizona State. The timing of it obviously makes it feel like it's in conjunction with the Georgia arrival. But at the end of the day, man, the kid and his family were putting together evidence. They were collecting all this stuff. The filing just happened to hit when it hit. And I think that they've probably got a pretty strong case. Now, we're going to have to hear what Florida has to say. We're only getting the one side of it right now. But it's exposing an interesting side of college football. You knew that this was probably going to come down the pipe at some point. You didn't know which kid it was going to be, which school it was going to be. Eventually, somehow, somebody was going to sue somebody over some money. And so the timing of it's interesting. I think that, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see. And I don't think, somebody on the board commented and said, oh, we got the circus coming to town. I don't know that it's going to be much of a distraction or a headache for Georgia. I think Georgia knew this going in. And, I think that they probably understand where it's coming from.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I can hear it now. There's a couple of Gator casuals. I'm talking to you guys. If you, one or two of you kind of decide to be listening to this, hey, it was a stipulation. Hey, you can hear it in a Tuesday, not a Tuesday. You can hear it in a First Watch or a little diner down in Gainesville right now. It was a stipulation. If he came to Georgia, they wanted him to file that lawsuit.
Right. Sure.
This is all Kirby Smart's doing.
Sure.
Listen, I'm the kind of person, and this is probably why I'm poor, that I would want this to go away. Like, I would just want to be done with it.
Florida? If you're Florida?
Yeah, if I'm Jaden Rashada too, like Florida for sure. But if I'm Jaden Rashada too, like part of me would just be like, man, I want to get past this. But there's more to this than recovering what money you lost. I mean, Roos, I sat there and I watched Georgia fans say, don't want cancer. When this kid was committed to Miami, he got a major, major life-changing offer, flipped to Florida. They reneged on that. And then what are you going to do at that point? Right. If an employer brings you in, if On3 had hired me and we had a contract in place, and then they were like, hey man, listen, we're not going to pay you that money we said we were going to pay you. Yeah. I'm out the door. I'll go find something else to do. I don't want to work. Not only do I, and I'm not saying this is a blemish on Florida's program. It's Florida's collective or whatever that whole side of it is. Florida, the University of Florida is what it is. It's a great school. I'm not trying to say the University of Florida is this. But why would you want to go in? Like, I remember I was trying to buy a vehicle like a year ago, I think it was. And I was at a Toyota dealership, and I was going to buy a Tacoma, and it was a used Tacoma. And I remember I sat down, and you were actually a part of this because you sent me the Carfax report. And I looked at the Carfax report that you sent me, and it was up to date and it had the exact mileage on the vehicle. And I looked at the other Carfax that they gave me to sign to show me all the recalls. And it didn't show the last like 17,000 miles in that vehicle. And the one that you showed me had like a small fender bender on it, which wouldn't have been a big deal if they would have shown that to me. But I looked at theirs and it was different. I was like, I don't want to do business with people like this. It's misleading. I don't want to go into that. So I understand where they're coming from. Now, me personally, I would probably want to walk away from this and just be done with it. But I don't think this is going to be a major distraction. I don't think this is a reach. I think that, they feel wronged by this. And
they should.
Yeah.
If somebody took $9 million out of my pocket, I'd feel wronged as hell.
First of all, I'd be like 8.9999 in the negative if they took $9 million from me. I don't know where they're getting that $9 million from.
Sure, I would have already spent it by now, so I would need to cover my losses.
Yeah.
But to me, you said I would want this to go away. I think that's even more pressing on Florida's side. Florida, listen, this is not an image. They're carrying an image from this too. And that's out in the public, and that's out in the college football world of, if you're going to deal with Florida, you better be careful, because look at the Jaden Rashada thing. The longer this drags out, this is going to national news. It already is. CBS Sports, On3, everybody's putting it out. But this will go higher than that. I think that you'll probably see this on your major news networks because it's so unprecedented, because it's a lot of money. Florida, I think, is going to need and want to avoid that PR. It won't surprise me to see them kind of back off of this thing. That's just my personal feeling at this moment. I think that they'll probably want to get this done, get a settlement, get an NDA in place. Let's all move on with our lives. I don't know. That's kind of what I foresee happening because like I said, to me, it's much more damaging to the long-term future of Florida than it is to the long-term future of Jaden Rashada.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And here's the thing. They do, they do want to get rid of this as fast as they can. But the thing about that is they also have a responsibility not to get completely taken to the cleaners.
Sure.
So that's where this kind of puts Florida between a rock and a hard place. Is they can't just get completely wiped out by this, but at the end of the day, they probably don't want it to drag on. Honestly, I think this probably will drag on because the first thing is something that they can control. The second thing is not something they can control. The first thing is a need. The other thing is a want. Like you can't let them crater your collective or crater your reputation or your, war chest just to, maybe look a little better in the public eye. I mean, they've already been raked over the coals with this once in the court of public opinion with the way that everything went down the first time. So they're no stranger to that. I think they'll probably have some thick skin. This thing will drag out for a while, but I know what a lot of Georgia fans who didn't want Jaden Rashada are thinking right now. They're thinking, oh yeah, this here comes the dog and pony show, the distraction for the program. I do not think it'll be that by any means. This is something
I don't either. And like I said, man, I mean, I believe it was John Talty, if I'm not mistaken, of CBS Sports. 24/7 he may work for. I don't know, one of the two. But essentially included something in his piece that said that Kirby was made aware and had given his blessing. Now, we haven't confirmed that. That was his reporting. But if that's true, that's not hard for me to believe. I mean, I don't – let's put it this way. I don't think the Rashadas showed up to Georgia, said, yeah, everything's hunky-dory, let's go, and then filed a lawsuit against the University of Florida without telling Kirby Smart that was going to happen. That would be bad business on their part, and I'm sure Kirby wouldn't have appreciated that. So it's not hard for me to believe that he had some heads up on that.
Harlan walking up into Kirby's office was, hey, you want to look over this real quick before I send it?
There's a lot of conjecture too over on the Florida board regarding the idea of the defendant is not the University of Florida. The defendants are Billy Napier and then one of the guys who is in the collective. So does this torpedo Billy Napier? Does Florida, you're seeing this already, and I'm not speaking, this is not me saying this. I'm talking about Florida fans.
I'm not saying this. They're saying this.
They're saying it. They're saying it, not me. They're over here. They're kind of openly wondering aloud, does this provide an opportunity for us to get out of this contract with calls. Can we zero this thing out rather than pay a $25 million buyout for this guy?
And then next thing you know, Florida fans are like, Jaden Rashada's our hero.
Yeah, right. Sure.
He trots into the game in the fourth quarter in Gainesville. I mean, in Jacksonville this year, and they're cheering him because Billy Napier got fired.
Just a standing O for him. I mean,
we love you, Jaden. Well worth the money.
Somebody said, could they Pruitt him? That was the phrase.
Probably not. And I hope that doesn't happen because by all counts, Billy Napier is a pretty decent dude.
Sure.
And it's not going great at Florida. It's tough to go great at Florida right now. You gotta pick a program off the mat while punches are being thrown at your lips constantly. So
all right, this good question here. DGD podcast wants to know: does this make Jaden Rashada an automatic damn good dog?
I don't know, man.
In the eyes of some, I think it would.
If it gets Billy Napier out of town, maybe not.
No, sure.
What if they get Billy Napier out of town and they hire their next Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier? Here, listen, guys, this is one of those books, right? We're on chapter 1 of this book, so let's read the whole thing before we start, trying to get it put on the New York Times bestseller list or anything like that. Let's kind of get through it. Listen, I want to talk about this because this is something. ESPN, Mark Schlabach, a guy who we hope to talk to very soon, recently wrote, I think it was yesterday, this power rankings. Georgia post-spring is still number 1. You got Ohio State with all those transfer portal additions with Caleb Downs and Quinshon Judkins and all those guys they talked into coming back. They seem to be kind of the boutique number 1. Like folks think, well, this team might be the most talented team in the country at the very least. What say you? Is Georgia really the nation's number 1 team? Are we really covering a team that has won, what is it, Roos, 42 out of 44 games, and they're still going to be ranked number 1 going into the next season?
So my thing is this. I think that you could go a couple of directions with it. I think Ohio State, like you said, that makes sense. That's probably a choice that would probably be the other choice in my opinion. Georgia is getting the nod, I think, like Bama used to. I think that they're getting, look, they've got a lot of talent. They develop their talent. They recruit well. They've hit the portal well. And if you're looking for the key element, I think too, Ohio State kind of still figuring out its quarterback situation. Will it be Will Howard? Probably. But meanwhile, Georgia returning one of the guys who's the front runner for the Heisman at that position. That's, I think, where you're probably getting the benefit of the doubt in the eyes of many of these people. Now, Georgia's got a lot of unproven guys. I mean, they're going to have a lot of people they're rolling out there that have not, done it a lot while the band's playing. You're replacing some key pieces. You're replacing some guys, and you're bringing in new pieces, right? Too, like a Trevor Etienne or whatever. So I do think Georgia is getting a nod for what they have done. And I think that that's probably fair. That's kind of the way you have to go in some respects. If I think Ohio State's right there. I think they're nipping at it for sure. But I do think that Carson Beck probably puts Georgia over the top in the minds of many. The most important position on the field, Georgia easily gets the plus mark there.
It's funny, Kirby Smart, so they're scratching records right now because, just on the 1s and 2s because he's turned the table, really. I mean, he has completely turned it. I mean, a couple years ago, you're thinking about it, and it's like, hey, I don't know if Georgia can, 2-3 years ago, I don't know if Georgia can compete with Ohio State. The gap at quarterback's too large. And now you're talking about Georgia maybe getting the edge over Ohio State in a lot of minds because Georgia's better at the quarterback position. I mean, I think Will Howard's a good player.
And I think a few years ago too, you had the question of, can Georgia sustain? Right? Yeah. Is this flash in the pan or is this built for the longevity? 3 years ago, we're having the answer now when you're being looked at as still the number 1 team in America.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever felt that because I always felt like the roster would be great. I just didn't know. My biggest question was quarterback. It wasn't that was Stetson Bennett a good player or was JT Daniels a good player. We felt that, but it was kind of like were the other schools just so much better at it than Georgia that it cured a lot of ills. And I felt like Georgia had a roster that was always going to help it, win the games needed to get to the SEC championship game. Well, when you get to the SEC championship game, you're basically in the college football playoff quarterfinals at that point. You win that one, you get into the playoff. But in Georgia's case, in 2021, they didn't win it and they got in. But it's just wild how now that Georgia, the gap between Georgia and everybody but Texas, it feels like, is pretty significant at quarterback. And on top of that, Georgia's I feel like is really good on both lines of scrimmage. Palmer and I debated it here recently talking about the defensive line. I'm bullish on it. I think it's going to be really good. I like the mix of really experienced talent and young, high upside talent. I think the offensive line is as deep and as physical as Georgia has had. Maybe you don't have that superstar stud, definitely first round left tackle or tackle at the moment, but you do have a really good deep offensive line, and you need that. And I think that's something that Ohio State may be also lacking as well. And it's also the whole idea that Ohio State's kind of core. If you look at their top 5 to 6 players on that roster, you're seeing transfer portal additions. You do that for Georgia, you may have one. Dominic Lovett may be the only one. I mean, you got Carson Beck, you got
Trevor Etienne.
Yeah, maybe Trevor Etienne. Yeah, maybe. But you look at you got Carson Beck, got Michael Williams, you got Malachi Starks. I think those would probably be everybody's top 2. Top 3 right there. So I don't know. It's one of those things. And it's almost unbelievable to think that Georgia has won what it's won in the past few years, and to do what it's done, and just to carry it over and to get so much love as the nation's number 1 team. When, I do feel out there are a lot of good teams out there.
I'm looking at the depth chart. I'm a service that I use quite frequently, and I hope that we're okay to mention it. Our lads, because they got the depth charts up there. I'm looking at Ohio State's depth chart, and so my feeling is this: I would say that I would give them an edge, definitely at running back. I think that they're very deep there between Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson. That's an excellent backfield. Quarterback, definitely Georgia is getting the win there. Tight end, they're getting the win. Offensive line, I'm gonna say push.
I would definitely go Georgia.
I
feel like Ohio State just struggled so much last year to
I don't know enough about Ohio State's offensive line. That's why I'm giving them the push.
Yeah.
And then wide receiver, in terms of homegrown guys, you probably give the nod to Ohio State. In terms of when you talk about Lovett and Ra and Colby Young, I think that they're right there. You've got.
I would give the edge to Ohio State, but it's not as big of an edge as Ohio State has had in that category in the past.
I would agree with that.
I like that Georgia. The thing about Georgia's receiver group is Ohio State lost Marvin Harrison, and that's a big loss. But they bring in Jeremiah Smith. They have the Ibuka kid.
Yeah.
They have some other really good players.
Yeah.
I think their top shelf talent and the way they use their wideouts would kind of give them the edge. But I feel like Georgia just has 6-7 guys. I mean, you look at the last time Georgia played Ohio State, you're looking at probably Georgia's 6th wideout really torching them. That was Arian Smith. So, keep going.
Defensively,
at it.
Defensively, I'm probably going to give them. I would give them the nod on edge. I think that they probably get
some veterans coming back. They're
right. It's a more proven. Michael Williams. It's going to be interesting to see how he takes to that. But these guys are pretty battle tested in that regard. Defensive line, I think Georgia probably gets the nod there. Linebackers, I'm definitely giving it to Georgia. And then you're talking about defensive backs. They do have some experience there. Georgia does too, though. And gosh, I mean, you could almost zero out Malachi Starks and Caleb Downs.
Yeah, just let Malachi Starks and Caleb Downs fight.
Yeah, sure. I like that. But it's probably I do ultimately I think Georgia does kind of get the nod. And like I said, to me, the big separator being quarterback. I think that's probably the thing that puts them over the top.
No doubt, it's the game's most important position, and Georgia has the edge for that one. So I mean, that means a lot. All right, you want an edge? We got a guy that can give you an edge. This is our guy, Andy Ludicky, over at My Perfect Franchise. Are you displaced corporate executive, or do you want to put your career in your own hands? Are you an experienced entrepreneur and you want to diversify? Well, Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan. Andy's a franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Make a change if you want to change, okay? And this guy can help you do that. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. And we, as I always say, we very much appreciate our man Andy Ludicky over there. Roos, what else have we learned out of the scavenger hunt weekend? What else do you? We've talked to Rusty about it. Rusty obviously had some stuff to say. What has kind of been your feeling off the scavenger hunt, and what have you kind of maybe heard that you can share with our YouTube crowd?
Well, I did 3 big takeaways yesterday over at DawgsHQ, and I won't give them all away, but one of the things that really is standing out to me early on is the returns that you're hearing on James Coley. And I think that is something that has caught my ear throughout this. There was some hand wringing from some people regarding, oh, that's a retread. Oh, it's a
change the game.
Right.
Out there with that high pitched voice.
That's a good James Coley. There was, like I said, a little bit of a hand rubbing. Oh my God, this is the best we can do. We're going to go back and get James Coley. He was a disaster.
Whoa, hand rubbing. Whoa.
Yeah. At the end of the day, man, the guy, I think people forget or forgot over the course of his absence that James Coley is a damn good recruiter. And people wondered, could he do it in the NIL era? Now, that's still in its infancy. We'll have to see about that. Can he close on some of these guys? But the marks that he's getting early on from these guys, I think, are really pretty telling. I think that he has endeared himself to a lot of these guys. Guys know his reputation. They know guys he's coached. They know guys he's coached at Georgia. Mecole Hardman and George Pickens are 2 huge names in the NFL right now. So that's really helping. And the fact that not only did those guys come from Georgia, but they were actually under and developed by this guy is a really nice selling point, I think, for Georgia right now. So that's one of my big takeaways. I think that, Georgia did a good job as well, getting some guys on campus that it will have a chance to get back on soon. David Sanders, Zayden Walker, to get these guys to come back to campus this close to their official visits, I think was just a massive win on their part. There's no other way to really spin that. Was it a huge weekend for Georgia in the sense that it led to commitments? No. But is it one of those that we will look back on as important? I do think so. I think that it's an opportunity for Georgia to have kind of built some camaraderie with some of these guys, kind of expanded their footprint with some of these guys, and ultimately just put themselves in a better position moving forward. So this is, like I said, I believe it was a scavenger hunt last year that was the famed throwing session?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it may not be quite as hyped as that. But they still got some players out of that weekend. Colton Heinrich. Out of that weekend. Marcus Harrison also committed that weekend as well. There were some guys in that that came to the scavenger hunt last year that ended up being a part of this class. And I could easily see that being the case again this year. I don't know if it'll be either of these wideouts. I don't know if it will be, they're going to have to put some work in. But was it huge for a guy like David Sanders to come within 2 to 3 weeks of his official visit? Yeah. The more you can get that guy on campus, the better it is.
That famed throwing session, man. Georgia at one time had, I think, 4 or 5 guys committed from that throwing session. It ended up with 2. Scovey White and Scovey White, I believe, was there, and Heinrich was there. I think we're safe to say that now, even though he was on his official, whatever. We'll just be quiet. But Nikar, nope. Dylan Ravioli, Dylan Raiola, no, he did not commit. He did not stay committed to Georgia. I mean, wasted a Saturday morning of my life, kind of, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Went out there, but hey, we kicked butt because we weren't the first ones out there. But I was over there slinging interviews to you guys and saying, "Hey, y'all ride them." Everybody else is trying to get them.
Yeah.
And we teamworked that one, but yeah, that turned out to be a little bit of a dud in the long run. Almost like every package deal I've ever heard of in recruiting, and almost like so many other big time hashtags and stuff like that just never lives up. But you bring up the James Coley thing, and a lot of folks really like to focus on that offensive coordinator stint, that 1-year deal, and it just didn't work out. And I don't know why it didn't work out. Maybe it's because he's not a good offensive coordinator. That's plausible. I'm not saying it's not. Maybe it was because, Georgia was in a tough situation at receiver. I mean, listen, his first stint at Georgia, he started his first stint at Georgia. It was his first time ever coaching wideouts. He had coached running back. He had coached tight ends. He coached quarterbacks. He had never coached wideouts. So that was something new to him. But it's not surprising to me that he has come in and brought some juice and has gotten Georgia in position. Long way to go in NIL. Everything can change. We know it's different. I don't think it's as different as everybody wants to make it out to be, but it's definitely different. One of the things I picked up on kind of coming out of the Scavenger Hunt weekend was just, man, it seemed like every single guy you talked to really felt the gravity of what Georgia wanted to do with that, which was make it kind of I don't want to say exclusive, but special, to make it a very special interaction with the coaches and things like that. And everybody came out of that weekend talking about kind of how much of a priority they felt like and how big of a deal it was to them. And obviously that's what you're wanting to get into. And something you brought up that I think is something that gets underrated in recruiting is when you can go bam, bam with a recruit, and when you can go like visit and get them in town two quick times, it's like there's a well, we never left type feeling there. There's a visit high that you can capitalize on before it completely wears off. You get them back, and David Sanders is going to be a really tough recruitment. It's pretty clear that Ohio State, Tennessee, and Clemson have really put a lot of time and resources into this recruitment. Georgia has too. But I keep looking at I think Georgia made a move with Zaire Addison.
Yes.
And, if you want to talk about a guy, David Sanders is one of those guys that I'm kind of like, all right, I don't know that he's learned how to play football yet. We've discussed that. And I think he's going to be great. But if I'm sitting here looking at the guy that I think is going to be, that I know is almost can't miss, I feel like Addison's that guy.
85-inch arms.
Yeah.
60. What is he? 6'4", like 280. Which some people have questioned the size. I'm like, look, that's not unusable. That's not usable size. No. I mean, he's a multi-sport athlete. He runs track. He wrestles. The guy is a damn fine player, and Georgia would be more than lucky, I think, to add him. Whoever gets the kid's going to get him.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say he's better or should be ranked higher than David Sanders. I'm not saying that at all. Like I think the world of David Sanders. I think he could be one of the best offensive tackles we've seen in a long time. But there's a can-be aspect there because he's kind of a narrow kid. Like he's thin, man. I know he's 280 pounds right now, or 275 pounds, or whatever he is, but he's got a long way to go before he's Andrew Thomas or before he is that big. I mean, I feel like, Zaire Addison, also a little on the light side, but I feel like a big frame, a wide guy, a guy that's going to kind of grow into that frame a little bit better. Maybe a little bit more of a sure thing, whereas, David Sanders brings, more upside. But listen, these recruiting weekends are massive. It's good to get some buzz going into kind of an off weekend. Georgia won't be hosting guys for Memorial Day weekend. But June will be official visit weekend after official visit weekend after official visit weekend. And if it's anything like last year, we're going to be, tripping over ourselves to try and pre-record commitment breakdowns so that we can discuss all these and have them out in a timely fashion because they happen so fast. I mean, Georgia's class grew exponentially in June and July last year. And I think it'll do the same thing again this year.
Yeah, no, it was.
Which was worse? Tell me this. Which was crazier? Was it the commitment fest in June and July, and even into August with guys like Nate Frazier, and even maybe even to September with Chris Cole? There was a good run there. Was it that, or was it National Signing Day when 20 guys all signed within like 30 minutes?
That was so much worse, dude. That's horrible. That's horrible. I hate that. It's yeah, that's hard. That's hard. I tell people all the time, I am glad that things, I don't think it's the best thing for the kids, but it's much better for me that signing day is what it is now, because tracking 45 dudes going into one February Wednesday was tough back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, when it was all on one day, I mean, there was just, dude, I remember getting into some things, and I was thinking in my head, I was like, this is what it would feel like to have to dig completely out of a hole. Like I am underneath right now. I have so much going on. I've got to flip a bunch of profiles. I got to write a bunch of stories.
You just didn't know. You didn't know.
Yeah.
Like there were dudes. I mean, how often? What is it? Maybe twice on a signing day this time of the or this go round. Are we waiting on a guy? Are you waiting on a guy to make a decision? Most everybody's hazing the barn. You can pre-write your stories, bingo, bango. There's very little surprises. Man, used to, it was just like, I hope he gets that paperwork in. I don't know.
Yeah. I wrote this story and it's getting a lot of views right now, but man, that paperwork should have been in an hour ago.
Right.
It's just crazy. It's nuts, but it's cool now that the schools even do it like they do it, where they can announce them on Twitter.
Yep.
Where, you can kind of confirm them as signed, and those kind of help out a lot too. All right. We are not 100% sure if we're going to be back again this week. We've been doing one show during the week, during the off season, just because there's not as much to talk about, but we know for a fact we'll be back with you Monday night or Sunday night for another episode of the Georgia Show. We'll be back Monday night for the last Bark After Dark in May. We're in May. Oh, man, getting all mixed up. So join us for that for sure. And hey, we'll let you know. Keep tabs on the channel. We may try to get back to you a little later on this week with another show, especially if another lawsuit pops up or something like that. We'll be all over it. Y'all take it easy.
Versus the people.
That's right.